Alright folks, how you doing? So in this video I'm going to be reading once again from the book William Wallace, Robin Hood Revealed, page 288 and 289. Now, two things before I begin reading this. First of all, this is not my opinion, and second of all, I don't know if this is right or wrong. The reason I'm reading this out and presenting this information is to basically give an insight into what may have been going on. Am I saying that this book is 100% accurate? No. Am I saying it's 100% right? No. But what I am saying is it's worth consideration. So let's get started. John Knox was born to English parents in Cleghorn, East Lothian. His parents lived under the patrimony of the Earl of Angus, head of the House of Douglas, who was to act as an agent for his brother-in-law, Henry VIII. Knox was ordained a priest in 1536 but did not serve in a parish. Instead, it is said he became a tutor in the family of an East Lothian laird. In 1544 and 1545, Lothian suffered two destructive invasions by England. Knox's brother, a successful trader who also operated as a secret agent in the pay of England, may have influenced the future reformer. It was at this time that Knox first began his mission, when he appeared in public with George Wishart. Wishart had come to Scotland from Geneva, Switzerland, where he had embraced the teachings of John Calvin. Calvin's ideas spawned a more radical form of the Protestant faith than had been preached by Martin Luther. Wishart, on his return, had in his company English envoys pressing for an Anglo-Scottish alliance. In political terms, Wishart was an English agent. In March 1546, he was tried as a heretic, found guilty, and burned at the stake. Cardinal David Beaton, who had once accused him of being in England's employ, was held responsible for his death, and he in turn was murdered in St. Andrew's Castle by Wishart's disciples at the end of May. They took over the castle, and by Easter 1547, Knox had joined with them. They awaited the support of English troops, but in July 1547, the castle fell to French troops serving Mary of Guise, Scotland's Dowager Queen. Considering that Knox was involved in so serious a business as encouraging English forces to invade Scotland, he escaped relatively lightly, perhaps because of his priesthood, and was sentenced to only 1 year of hard labour as a galley slave. On his release, early in 1549, he went to England, where he received a hero's welcome and was invited to preach before Edward VI. He prudently turned down the offer of being made one of Edward's bishops, calculating that if the fragile boy king's life ended, then his half-sister, the Catholic Mary Tudor, would ascend the throne. This happened, and Knox fled to the continent, as a persecution of Protestants took place under Bloody Mary of England. In 1555 he returned for a few months to Scotland, where, quote, he associated with some powerful men before returning to Switzerland. Mary Tudor died in November 1558, and Elizabeth I ascended to England's throne. After a dozen years spent almost entirely in England, or in the company of English exiles, his speech, quote, now caused him to be taken for an Englishman. He asked to be allowed to return to England, but Elizabeth refused, as she had taken exception to Knox's tract, The First Blast of the Trumpet Against the Monstrous Regiment of Women. He returned to Scotland on the 2nd of May. The revolution was planned to begin on the 12th. On the 11th of May, he preached a sermon, quote, vehement against idolatry, which incited attacks on churches, and was followed by an emotional appeal to arms. An English diplomat remarked that, quote, the voice of that one man is able in an hour to put more life in us than 500 trumpets gradually blustering in our ears. Historians are agreed that John Knox was guilty of receiving payment from England to help extend the English crown's influence in Scotland. What is less known about John Knox is his family connection to some of the highest in the land. After Knox's English wife died, he married the daughter of the Lord Stewart of Avondale. This was a time of intrigue, as a great power struggle ensued. Numbers of unfortunate men and women, both Protestant and Catholic, suffered greatly for their religious convictions, some losing their lives as martyrs for their beliefs. The men who aspired to power hoped to make Major's dream of union with England a reality, but some obstacles had yet to be overcome before the average Scot could be reconciled to the proposition Major had championed. The memory of the great Scottish patriot helped reinforce a sense of national identity, and was therefore a significant obstruction. Wallace's place in the hearts and minds of the Scots would have to be diluted, and, if possible, erased entirely. His memory could act as a unifying force for the people of Scotland if they perceived the threat of English encroachment. The Protestant reformers intended gaining absolute political power in Scotland. Therefore, all sentiments for the old faith, or sentiment for any prominent disciple of it, was detrimental to their goals. Quote, "The Scottish medieval ballads perpetuated the dread of any interference with Scottish independence, and a jealous dislike of England, lest it might seize some opportunity to crush that independence. This jealousy is visible not only throughout the period of struggle in which the ballads originated. They weakened the hand of Knox and Murray, who identified Scottish interests with those of England. They formed a principal obstacle to the union of the century following. The work of the reformers did much to create the conditions that would ensure the eventual accomplishment of the Act of Union of 1707. Both Knox and Buchanan published separate histories of Scotland. These were to have a significant impact. William Ferguson comments, quote, "Knox's history was to contribute greatly, both directly and indirectly, to the debate about Scottish consciousness. Succeeding generations of reformed scholars were to redefine Scottishness." He further says of Buchanan, quote, "Buchanan's attacks on the Roman Church system amount to little more than incidental sneers and jibes, and do not constitute a sustained or reasoned thesis." He ends with a comment on those reformed scholars who succeeded Knox and Buchanan, quote, "Their very prejudices and obvious enough historical errors were of lasting significance, and helped to condition the future. The reformation of the Church in Scotland may have been instigated to realise a political ambition. Mary of Guise, Scotland's regent during the infancy of Mary Queen of Scots, suspected this was the case. She took John Knox and his colleagues to task on this issue, accusing them of doublespeak when they espoused their philosophy of the commonweal, and told them she believed that their true intention was not a reformation of the Christian faith, but a bold bid for worldly power. Her comment may have some justification if viewed alongside what later transpired. When Mary Queen of Scots ascended the throne, she declared that there should be no interference with the form of public worship prevailing in post-Reformation Scotland, but in accepting that the country was Protestant, she wanted her right accepted to personally practice Catholicism. The establishment of Protestantism in Scotland may not have been enough, as a Catholic dynasty on the Scottish throne presented a major obstacle to unification with England. The Queen was deposed and later executed by her cousin, Elizabeth I. So there's a lot to think about in that passage, and when we go into other sources later on, which I will be doing, bear all this in the back of your minds. Anyway, I hope you found this informative, and thank you for listening.